Thank you for coming. My name is Eric Metaxas, and welcome to Socrates in the City. You can applaud, that's all right. Yes, it's an institution now. You have to applaud. Okay, how many of you are here for the very first time tonight? Oh my goodness, that's a lot of you. So I probably want to tell you a little bit about the format. After Dr. Alice von Hildebrand and I talk, we will have some time for Q&A. We will finish by 8:20 sharp. We can promise that, so don't run away. We'll be done by then. Then we'll have a book signing and then a patrons dinner for those of you who are coming to that. All right, so I want to announce that with Alice von Hildebrand, we have tonight, for the first time in Socrates in the City history, our first nonagenarian guest. Yeah, we've never had a nonagenarian before. It's a little complicated. Vegetarians are tough enough, as you know, and it's even more complicated because I think nonagenarians, they don't even eat, like eggs and cheese and any of those products. So it's very complicated. But honestly, to have Dame Alice with us this evening makes me extremely happy. Now, you notice I said Dame Alice. I'm not using the word dame in the Frank Sinatra, Pal Joey sense of the word. A lot of dames get hot under the collar when I use the word that way. Of course, tonight I'm using the word dame in a completely different sense. And as I always like to say, in fact, there really is nothing like a dame. Am I right? So, but why am I using the word dame? I'll tell you. It's not just because I love getting to use that word the way I love getting to talk to English historians so I can say Edward the Bastard, right? It's a much more important reason. It's because 3 weeks ago, approximately, at a celebration for her 90th birthday, Pope Francis, yes, that's actually the Pope, declared our friend Alice von Hildebrand as a Dame Grand Cross of the Equestrian Order of St. Gregory. I had the honor of being there. Cardinal Raymond Burke as prefect of the Apostolic Signatura. Is that right? Signatura? I don't know. Anyway, big shot at the Vatican. Formally invested her at this event in the chivalric order. That was October 30th at an event, as I said, celebrating her 90th birthday, which was actually in March, but I'm not supposed to tell you that. So she's really bumping up against 91 at this point. It's incredible. Let me say, membership in this equestrian order dates back to 1831 and is the highest honor a pope can bestow upon a layman. So obviously an extraordinary thing. Now, suffice to say, we've never before had a member of this equestrian order at Socrates in the City, so we were a little bit unprepared for what it entailed. I'm most of all very sorry to say the Union League Club did not allow the horse into the club this evening. They've had some very bad experiences with animals here in the past. I think there was a William F. Buckley event. There was a chimp on roller skates that freaked everybody out because he preferred Carter to Reagan. That's really what it was. In any case, thank you. You've been a great audience. But they have had a lot of issues with animals over the year. It's a charming old club, but some of you already know this because you've been to previous events. It's absolutely infested with cockroaches and rats. And it's so the city of New York would have boarded it up long ago, but the club is so old that it's grandfathered in. They can do what they like. So, but I want to say, if you are bitten by a rat tonight, and someone will be, don't even bother to try to sue the club. It's forget it. They can do what they like here. Usually, I have to say, just to prepare you, because so many of you are first timers. Usually, it is the ladies that get bitten because of exposed ankles and things. And for some reason, I don't know why, it's always during the Q&A. Yeah, and don't laugh too much because for whatever reason, laughter emboldens them. So just keep that in mind. Thank you. Okay, but back to Dame Alice's horse. As I said, it's just a gorgeous animal, was not allowed into the club. But you can rest assured that Sparky, for such as this incredible animal's name, is properly cared for right now outside on 37th Street. And tonight, Dame Alice can ride him back up to Scarsdale when the whole thing is over. He's the friskiest horse I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of horses, obviously. That's really the point. Now, if you go home to Scarsdale via the West Side Highway, beware of biker gangs. That's all I'm gonna say on that. All right, let me get serious for a second. Not everything has to be a joke, okay, please. We are so pleased and honored and privileged to have Dame Alice von Hildebrand with us tonight. As I said 3 weeks ago at the celebration for her 90th birthday when she got this amazing award, it was just an extraordinary evening, and it was then that I realized it's been, I think, 4 years since we had the joy of having Lily, as her friends call her, here. And I said, we've got to get her back, even though we've only got about 3 weeks till our next event. So we worked it out. We're so glad so many of you could be here tonight. Cardinal Burke at this event said that the von Hildebrands, that's her late husband Dietrich von Hildebrand and Alice von Hildebrand, worked together, quote, in the study of truth taught to us both by faith and reason, and in the life of truth through the love of God. In thanking God for the gift of Alice von Hildebrand to us and to so many whose lives... Amen. Thank you. I don't know if you remember, the last time you were here, there was a jackhammer outside. That's not a joke. Some of you remember. It just, we actually had to tip them to make them go away. That's true. That sounds like a joke. That's true. Where was I? Yes, I was reading this lovely quote from Cardinal Burke. In thanking God for the gift of Alice von Hildebrand to us and to so many whose lives she's transformed by her teaching and her writing, let us join with her in preserving the memory of her beloved husband and in making his important writings more available and better known. Now, some of you know about the work of Dietrich von Hildebrand. We'll be touching about that in our conversation tonight. To me, the most extraordinary thing, perhaps, about him is that he was born in 1889. But something I want to share tonight is that some of you also wouldn't know that he was a fierce opponent of Hitler and the Nazis long before Hitler came to power. And this is true. Adolf Hitler called him the most dangerous enemy of Nazism. Can you believe that? And we have his widow with us this evening. I just can't believe that. So let me tell you a little bit about Alice von Hildebrand. Alice Jourdain von Hildebrand was born in Belgium in 1923, came here to the U.S. in 1940. Soon afterwards, she met Dietrich von Hildebrand and began taking philosophy studies at Fordham University as his student, taking, according to the bio, nearly 18 courses with him. Now, wouldn't nearly 18 just be 17? I'm confused. I want to talk to whoever wrote the bio. Nearly 18. That's 17. In base 10, that's 17. In any case, she was captivated by his mind, obviously. She later would become a secretary, collaborate with him on a number of books. Actually, starting in 1947, she herself began teaching at Hunter College in New York. Hunter College is today, of course, a Korean Presbyterian church. What's that? Right. We'll explain that later. She was eventually appointed professor of philosophy at Hunter College, where for 37 years, she was an extraordinarily successful teacher. A number of her students converted to the Christian faith under her influence, despite the decidedly anti-Christian spirit at Hunter. In 1959, she married Dietrich von Hildebrand. Upon her retirement in 1984, she was given, that's 29 years ago, my goodness. She was given a special award by Hunter in acknowledgement of her great distinction as a teacher, and this distinction was on the basis of student evaluations. Those of us who know her are not at all surprised. She's the author of numerous books, of one of which we'll discuss tonight. Since her retirement 29 years ago, she's been active as a lecturer on countless topics. Her journeys have taken her all over the world. She has made over 80 appearances on EWTN. Is that possible? 80? It's probably even more now because she was just on the other day. She's devoted her entire life to making known the thought and witness of her husband, Dietrich von Hildebrand. Tonight, we have the honor of talking with her about her most recent book, Man and Woman, A Divine Invention. Please, Socrates in the City audience, join me in welcoming my friend, an extraordinary human being, Dame Alice von Hildebrand. Welcome. Are we on? All right, so you'll take this chair here. Thank you. Yes. You're right. Okay? All right. You can put this anywhere you like. Okay? All right. Wow. Well, that's that. How are you?
You know, I'm glad that I'm deaf.
Yes, I know. I knew she was going to say this. I knew she was going to say that. I got to tell you, so am I. We're just thrilled to have you here. I can't believe it's been so many years, and I wasn't joking. The last time you were here, you gave a speech from a podium, and the moment you started speaking, there was a jackhammer right outside here. And we had to have somebody go down and pay somebody off to get rid of the jackhammer. So let's hope that doesn't happen now because funds are low. All right. Well, where to begin? Now, shall I call you Dr. von Hildebrand, Dame von Hildebrand? How can I address you properly?
You know, don't say doctor. I don't say anything like that. I'm just your friend, and that's plenty.
Just my friend?
What matters, yes.
All right.
But I mean, you're not going to have an easy time because I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yes.
We'll soon see about that. Okay.
Well, look.
All right, Lily, the gloves are off.
We live in a society where certain words have gained currency. And one of the most important words in our society is freedom of choice. Do you agree?
Do I agree that that is an important phrase in our society?
Freedom of choice.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have limited, no. Have you chosen to exist?
Have I no.
You haven't.
Not that I know of.
Well, I mean, then the problem is it was imposed upon you.
Yes.
Well, it's also something which is worrisome in our society. I'll go further. And this is a very personal question. Did you choose your sex?
Did I choose my sex?
Yes.
Turn the speakers off. It's not a black and white thing. It's a process. It's going to take 2 years. Listen, in America, if you work hard enough and you know the right doctors, you can be whoever you want to be.
Well, you know,
So the answer is I did not. No.
You did not.
No.
Is that fair?
It depends on the definition of fair, I think. It seems fair to me.
Suppose, which is an impossibility, that at the very moment of conception, God had said to you, do you want to marry a man or a woman? What would you have said?
Well, based on what I knew at the moment of conception, I was so young, I would have been confused by the question. I would have.
Well, at any rate, the fact is that you're a male, and I'm a female. I have not chosen it. No, I tell you something. I've been one for a long time. And
most of your life, probably.
Well, that's absolutely
Yeah.
correct. And I'm quite used to it. And not only am I used to it, but I like it. You know, I truly find that to be a woman is something which is magnificent. Now, when I decide to take an early retirement from hunter or sheer exhaustion, I decide to devote my life to 2 things. Number one, to spread my husband's legacy, which is a huge work and which I've been doing. But the second is to fight feminism.
To fight feminism.
And if there is one woman today who is a deadly...
Say it again, if there's what?
A deadly enemy of feminism, that's me. And I mean, you know, God knows if it's not a reason when all of a sudden I'm declared to be lady or something of the sort. I was, of course, taken by surprise. And the problem is that being so old, I find it very difficult to get used to. But I mean, I still have a few months to discover that I'm a lady of order?
I have to tell you, I don't know if we're supposed to call you Lady Alice or Dame Alice.
All right.
You don't know either.
All right. Now the question is, why do I fight feminism?
No, wait, I'm gonna hold off for a second here. I want to come to this, but I would love to ask you a little bit about your life before we dive into the deep end of the pool on this subject. Is that okay?
I was born a woman.
Okay, we can start there. We can start there. If you don't mind, because obviously we're here to talk about your book, Man and Woman: A Divine Invention. So I'm not trying to take the conversation. And before we get to that, I would love to talk to you a little bit about your life. Can you tell us why you chose to be born in Belgium?
I didn't choose it.
Oh, okay.
And choose it. You know, this is why, I mean, if I were Nancy Pelosi, I would resent it because my freedom of choice has not been respected.
Right.
At any rate, it was so I was born in Belgium, of a very Catholic family, at a time when Belgium was a Catholic country, which is no longer the case today. And I say so with tears. If you want to find a country which is totally secularized, that is my home country. Well, at any rate, Hitler came to power. And I mean, this creates a disaster in the whole of Europe, in the whole world. And I mean, for some strange reason, I landed in the United States, where an uncle and aunt of mine had emigrated because they realized the dramas was developing. And so I lived with them for 6 years. It was for some reasons that I'm not going to do, a very difficult period. But as God never forgets people praying, I was truly desperately praying to find some sort of solution to a difficult situation. And I met Dame von Hildebrand, was a refugee, came to the United States with one suitcase, living in utter poverty. He had been declared Hitler's enemy number one.
He came here in what year did he come here?
He came, you want to know the dates? I'm very good on dates.
I know you are, that's what I'm asking.
You know, that's my specialty. He came on the 23rd of December, 1940. And was living...
Was it a Tuesday? You don't know. You don't know. We don't care. 23rd December 1940. Now, just to pause, because folks don't know this, he left, as soon as Hitler came to power, he left Germany because he knew he would be killed in 33.
Not because he knew he would be killed,
no,
but simply because, I'm going to quote him, because it's best always to quote a person. He said, I do not want to live one day in a country ruled by a criminal. And he always referred to Hitler as a criminal, which didn't make him very popular. And so he left and he decided to fight Nazism from the outside. Bonhoeffer decided to fight from the inside, and he decided to fight, and he founded an anti-Nazi, anti-communist magazine that was founded by Dollfuss, who was Chancellor of Austria at the time. A very great man. And 8 months later, he was assassinated by Hitler. That is a proven fact. He was assassinated by Hitler on the 25th of July, 1934. And he was replaced by Schuschnigg, who was not a bad man, but he was for peace at all cost. You know, after all, Germany and Austria, we have the same language, we have the same tradition, and so. And so my husband became a thorn in his side. And I mean, it made his situation extraordinarily difficult. He was informed by the state of police that the Nazi wanted to assassinate him. When he was finally appointed at the University of Munich, instead of being professor, he was given just a sort of adjunct position. There was a violent demonstration preventing him. The students came with sticks to beat him down. And in order for him to give his lecture, the police had to be called. And when he gave his first talk at the University of Vienna, he was escorted by 48 policemen, armed policemen, to enable him to give his... Now, all this is going to be published, and John Henry, the young man who started the legacy, is going to be published by Random House next year. So, I mean, all this will be, you're going to see, he turned out to be Hitler's enemy number one. He left Austria 5 hours before the Gestapo came to arrest him. And then it's an extraordinary story of escaping to Czechoslovakia, and then Hungary, and then in Yugoslavia, and then Italy, and landed in Switzerland. And thank God, he had inherited a Swiss passport from his grandfather, was also a revolutionary, and was also condemned to death. Hitler was, I mean, my husband was condemned to death repeatedly by Hitler. And then finally he landed in France, and then he wanted to escape. I mean, it's all very dramatic, and it's going to be published next year.
So he came to the United States in December of 40.
Yes.
And when did you meet him? Were you attending Fordham, or you just met him outside of the context of school?
For several years. I was not permitted to continue my studies, but through some sort of a miracle, finally I was permitted to take a few courses at Manhattanville. And at Manhattanville, I met a professor who was a friend of his and invited me to attend one of his talks in his shabby apartment on Central Park, was very close to Harlem.
In his shabby apartment?
Shabby. Well, shabby meaning to say, you know, not very elegant.
I think maybe it needed a woman's touch.
I mean, at any rate.
So he was giving talks in his apartment, and you were invited?
He was giving a talk,
yeah.
And when he opened his mouth, I knew that I had met an extraordinary person. You know, his faith was something so vibrant. And so, you know, he truly gave us what I call the apostolate of being.
The apostolate of being?
Apostolate of being, not what you say, but what you are. And it reflected the joy of Christianity in such an aspect that it was from, you know, my darling friend Madeleine, who is there, had a very similar experience when she met him. And so, once again, through God's grace, I was permitted to continue my studies, and I studied at, my one great passion before meeting him was literature, or history, or music. But when I met him, I said, philosophy. This is what I'm called upon to do. And so I got my doctorate in philosophy, and then I landed at Hunter College, because for some surprising reason, Catholic colleges would not allow a woman to teach philosophy. You know, that was, of course, 60 years ago, or 70 years ago. Wow. And same thing happened to Edith Stein. And she was a genius, and I'm not a genius, but nevertheless, she could not find a job in a German university because she was only a woman. So this is going to be my theme, to be only a woman. It's a fascinating theme, and I can be very eloquent about it, you're going to see. You know, at any rate, I landed in the worst possible place for a Catholic girl with a very Catholic education.
Hunter.
A secular university for whom the word truth triggered panic. Panic, because it meant the Inquisition, and it meant the Crusades, and it meant narrow-mindedness, and it meant persecution, and the rest of it. Well, believe it or not, my memoirs are going to come out next year. I wrote, yes, well, I'm sorry to say, they're quite exciting. To such an extent that when you start reading it, you cannot put it down. And the title is going to be Behind the Enemy's Line, because there I was in a place where everything was opposed, my culture, my background, whatever you please. And how did I manage? All things are possible with God. You know the gospel, it's mentioned twice, all things are possible with God. And so I stayed there, and surprisingly enough, even though my colleagues disliked me intensely I never missed the chance of making me realize that I should be teaching in a very small little college in the Midwest. That's where I belonged. Well, I stayed in Hunter and attracted a good many students, as you probably have mentioned. And so that is my story. Now, when I left Hunter, I had a first taste of feminism because it started to develop in the 60s. And I realized that feminism is the greatest enemy of femininity. Yes. Now, you and Dano are going to start turning to the Bible, something that we share. And we're going to see that from the very beginning, women were truly a privileged person. Now look, I have a high regard and love for the other sex. As a matter of fact, when I think of my father and I think of my husband and I think of all the remarkable men that I've met in my life, but I'm awfully sorry to say that I'm going to speak about the beauty of femininity to such an extent that fear that some of my male friends in the audience are going to leave the place crestfallen and say, I'm only a man. That would be a disaster. So, yeah, my friend, we're going to make an agreement. Suppose that I succeed in explaining the beauty of femininity. You must solemnly promise that as soon as you have a chance to, you're going to have a man talking about the beauty of masculinity. Because, they belong together, but my theme is to speak about the beauty of femininity, and I'm going to find my arguments in the Bible. So let's start with Genesis, which is a good way of starting. God created man to his image and likeness. English is a great language. It's not my mother tongue, but it's a magnificent language. After all, he has produced a Shakespeare, and there's no match for it in other languages. The problem is that philosophically speaking, it's not a very good language. And if you try to translate from German into English, you're going to get into problems. Well, suppose that you take God created man to his image and likeness. In Latin, man is homo. But homo refers to man and woman. And in Latin, you make a distinction between vir, which means male, and mulier, which means female.
Vir is V-I-R.
In English, you don't.
Which is where we get the
word.
Homo.
He made homo. Now, in English, you say he made man to an image and likeness. Now, in English, it seems to give some sort of priority to the male because when you say male, you say man too. That's already one mistake. Now, in fact, when he created homo, male and female, they have a perfect dignity. You cannot say when both of them have both image to God, God's image and likeness. All right, let's continue. All of a sudden, the Bible tells us that Adam was created first. Key argument for the feminist. First, meaning to say he's better, he's superior, and so on. Simone de Beauvoir says female was a second thought, sort of inferior. Well, Simone de Beauvoir is my main enemy. And
by the way, we're never going to have her here, I promise you.
Unfortunately, she's dead and buried. And it's always mean to attack dead people, but I'm going to do so. At any rate, Adam is lonesome. And God said, it's not good for man to be alone. No, this is something very profound, meaning to say, if you're a person, you're made for communion. And this is so true that in the Holy Trinity, in God, you have a trinity of persons. Indicate, we are made for communion. And Adam is lonesome, and he sees all the animals and give them names, and none of them is worthy of him. And so God decides that he's going to give him a companion who is worth him and puts him in a deep sleep. And then, for some very, I'm not going into details because it's all very mysterious. The body of Eve is taken from the body of Adam. Don't ask me how it is done, I don't know.
How's it done?
But I mean, at any rate, once again, the feminists are going to see, you see, he is a main creature and she's only something taken from him. And then he wakes up from his sleep and he sees her. No, I'm going to put you on the hot spot. What does he say?
Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh.
Well, pretty good. Pretty good. But that's not enough. Meaning to say, you're truly, wait, you're truly worthy to be my companion. But then, you know what is interesting? The Bible doesn't tell us what Eve said when she saw Adam. And because I'm a woman, I know very well what I would have said about seeing Adam.
Put on a pair of pants.
He's enchanted. He's enchanted by her. He's enchanted. And this is what a man should do, the response, when he sees a woman who's truly worthy to be called woman. Now, being a woman, I know very well what the response is when I see a man worthy to be a man. And you know what it is? Admiration. In one case, it's enchantment. In the other case, it is admiration. And
so, this is at the heart of the difference between men and women?
Well, I mean, you know, I suggest that you take it or you leave it. I mean, it's my own humble opinion. But I mean, my response when I see a human being, a man, worthy to be called, whether it was so my father or my husband or admirable men that I've met, admiration, to look up for their strength, to feel there is someone who is given me to protect me. All right, but now comes the trump card of women. Now, once again, I'm going to put you on the hot spot. What does Adam see about Eve? He says something which is so amazing, so overwhelming, that I'm very sad indeed that it's not something that comes to a madman every single day of his life. He calls her the mother of the living. Now, dear one, let us stop. Do you realize that this is the most amazing compliment that you can give? Because life is a tremendous gift. That we live, we should call and thank God for it every single day, to be alive. And she's called the mother of the living. Is he called the father of the living? Not mentioned. Well, that seems to place women in a very, very superior position. The mother of the living. Now, unfortunately, things turn out very badly because the serpent, who is the most clever of all animals, decides that he's going to tempt them. They've been forbidden to eat of the fruit of a particular tree. They can eat any tree, any fruit, not that one. And he comes and addresses himself to Eve. Now, those who know me know that my great love is St. Augustine. I believe he's one of the greatest gifts given to the church. And when at age 19, I met Dame von Hildebrand, he said, "Have you read the Confessions?" And I hadn't. Well, he immediately could hold of the book. And I still believe it's one of the greatest books ever written, the Confessions of St. Augustine. So I love him, I look up to him, but unfortunately, and this is something we've given, even very great men can have a flaw. And I discovered one in St. Augustine. I regret it, I deplore it, but I simply have to say it's a very serious flaw. He writes explicitly, the serpent turned to Eve because he said, being the weaker one, she's easier to conquer. He's deadly mistaken. I mean, I repeat, I hate to criticize St. Augustine, but I just have to. I claim that he turned to Eve because being very, very clever, he knew that she had an enormous influence on her husband. No, influence is not authority, but I claim that influence is more important than authority because authority is limited to actions. And influences your whole being. And he says to her, you know, if you eat of the fruit of this tree, you're going to become like God. The one abominable temptation which is particularly prominent today, thou shalt be God. You no longer need God. We are so developed, we are so intelligent, we've made so many conquests, we can go to the moon. We are God. No, and then she yields and gives the fruit to Adam. Thus he said, my dear wife, don't you know it has been prohibited. First big wimp, he takes it. Keep this in mind. He does not object. He simply says, take it. And there comes the drama. Both are terribly punished. But in some way, her punishment is worse because she's punished in the very thing which is a glory, to give birth. To give birth. All right. She gives birth in pain and anguish. In other words, for a woman to exercise this privilege is linked to agonizing pains. And when you read the Bible again and again, when you refer to a very, very painful situation, like a woman in labor. She's in labor, it means to say anguish and pain and fear and whatever it is. All right. Now, what comes next? The exile from paradise. And from this moment on, there is something dreadful, which is pain, sorrow, and the fearful thing which is called death. It's the most fearful punishment that you can imagine. But of course, God promises a Savior. And the Savior is, as you know, Christ, the second person of the Holy Trinity, accepting to be crucified in order to save us. But what is so amazing is that he has a mother. He has no father, but he has a mother. And this mother is the most perfect creatures coming out of God's hands, untainted by original sin, all pure, all radiant, who declared herself to be the handmaid of the Lord. And therefore, it is by accepting to be a servant that she becomes a queen. And she conceives Christ and gives birth to our Savior. Now, let me ask you, I jumped one point, and let me go back. I apologize, but I just jumped one point.
Don't let it happen again.
Let us go back to Genesis. Well, you see, I'm old, and so things like that happen. She gives back. She is a mother of the living. She gives birth to Cain, the older son. And she makes a remark which is so amazing, so overwhelming, that I marvel at the fact that I question many people about this and they don't realize it. Gives birth to Cain and claims, I've brought a man into the world thanks to God. No, I try to feel myself into Adam. And there is the background, and very sheepishly says, well, didn't I have something to do with it too? It's not even mentioned. It's not even mentioned. He says, with God's help. Now, I'm going to say something which is my own product. So if it is good, well, thank God for it. If it's not, reject it. I claim that Eve is the first great theologian. Well, that sounds very strong. Eve, the first great theologian. I say, yes. What does he mean to say? It is with God's help. No, I'm not a biology major, but there are certain things that I know. The husband gives his semen to his wife, which travels a long way, and sometimes, by sheer pickup, like one out of millions of seeds, fecundates the egg. But where is the egg? In the woman's body, not outside, in. And then fecundated. This moment you don't have as yet a human being. You need a soul. And who produces a soul? God and God alone. Neither husband nor wife have anything to do with it. All right. Now, this implies, and this shows the incredible dignity of the female body. Let me repeat. The dignity of the female body, that God touches the female body and puts a soul in the fecundated egg, and then you have a human being. Now, if God touches your body, it gives your body a dignity which is incomparable. And there's nothing similar for the male sex. Now, I say, when Eve declares, with God's help, I brought a human being into the world, she's a theologian, because she recognized that it's only when the soul is put into the fecundated egg that you have a human being. So, I mean, just imagine the amazing people, the first great theologian, Eve. Well, it is so. Now, if God touches the female body, you know full well that what God touches is sacred. And this is why the woman is called upon to be veiled. Because whatever is sacred, whatever is holy, calls for veiling. And this is precisely what is being attacked today. That you're going to see the whole tendency is simply to say if a woman is veiled, it shows that she is inferior. Once again, the tragic weakness of the beautiful English language, that we use the word shame for something which is disgusting, revolting, filthy, and whatever. And we also use it for holy things. You know, this is a disaster. You know, such a great language. You know, in French you have, or in Latin you have the word pudeur, or pudeur. This means to say something is holy, something is special, and therefore you veil it. I was very, very depressed after Vatican II. That
you're not the only one. But
Vatican II, when women goes to go to church veiled.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they discovered that it simply means that they were inferior. And now they took off the veil. It's a catastrophic mistake. Because number one, because they lost sight of the fact of the dignity of the female body, number one. And then number two, you know, women are so concerned about their appearance. And I claim that veiling is a blessing when your appearance is not quite as what you would like it to be. You know, as strongly, you know, this is why, for example, you take nuns. They have these beautiful habits. Well, not only it was a sign of dignity, it was a sign of something sacred, something apart, but it was also one of the greatest blessings of old age. Yes. You know, when you see a nun with a habit, old age is hidden. But today you see these nuns, modern nuns, and they're 70 or 80 or my age, you know, and the appearance is no longer that flattering, and then they come with a long skirt or short skirt. It's a disaster. You see, I mean, they have absolutely understanding that veiling is not only symbolic, it's also beautiful. And I mean, I would like to convince women, veil yourself for the sake of making yourself more beautiful and more attractive.
Now, when you talk about veiling in the book, in your book, Man and Woman, you say that something that sets women apart is this idea of mystery.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? And also, when you talk about veiling, you don't only mean literally veiling. You're talking about it literally and as a whole concept, that the mystery of women should be veiled, that I guess it goes along with a general modesty. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, veil simply meaning to say when something is sacred, when something is personal, mysterious, intimate, you veil it. You see, I mean, that is the first reaction. I mean, suppose, for example, that I received an extraordinary moment of grace, that God truly touches my soul. I'm not going to call the New York Times and say, please, I would like to make the headlines. It's my secret. And I mean, this is why so often it is spoken of the secrets of the king. And this is something that we have lost sight of. If you read someone like Simone de Beauvoir, the presentation of women is so revolting. I mean, for example, she says, a woman is not a real being, she's only a becoming. She's an afterthought. She is disgusted with her own body. Now, look, she can speak about herself, but I absolutely objected to saying that I should be disgusted about my body, because I'm not. Why should I be disgusted about my body when it is created by God? And when, I mean, for her, of course, she's referring to the fact that women have period. I always thought that blood was something noble and great. To give one's blood to another person is the greatest sign of love. There's such a symbolism in it. There's such a beauty in it that we have lost sight of. So you see, now look, the very moment that we come to Mary, all this comes in all its splendor. One creature of such infinite beauty, that she is a queen of angels, she's a queen of the apostles, she's a queen of martyrs, she's the highest creature that God has created. Why does Satan attack the woman? To me, it is luminous, because he's the mother of the living, and Satan was a murderer from the beginning. Therefore, the enmity is between Satan and the woman. And this is why I declare clear and loud that abortion is the greatest victory that the devil has achieved since original sin. Because in this very moment, the woman is sacrificing what is her dignity to give birth, to bring someone into life. And the moment that abortion succeeds, you're going to see inevitably homosexuality and the collapse of marriage and the disaster that we see today. Same-sex marriage, which is something so abominable that you simply say to yourself, Satan is now directing the scene. And we've got to fight against every possible means. Now, let me go further. Christ has a mother and no human father. And Christ is the only priest. There's only one priest, and this priest is Christ. And I mean, this is one of the deep, deep convictions that when a priest enters the sanctuary to see the holy sacrifice of the Mass, in this very moment, he ceases to be Father Brown or Father Smith. And in this very moment, he represents Christ, something that many priests forget today. It's no longer, it is Christ himself in this very moment. No, Christ has a mother. The priest has a mother and no father. And this is the argument which I use when I fight tooth and nail against the ordination of women. Why? Because a mission of women is to be mother of priests. And you cannot be mother and son simultaneously. The dignity of woman is to be the mother of priests. And this is what they forget. And it is my absolute conviction today that as long as the beauty and dignity of the female in society, of woman in society, is not recognized, we are on the downhill path, which is today so evident that you can only say the devil has taken over. No. What about a male response?
Now, what about what?
A male response. You better to say something too.
I'm not sure that I should, really. I want to ask you...
You mean to have spoken too long?
No, I don't mean to. I mean to imply that as a joke, but you speak so wonderfully that I'm just mesmerized.
Well, I see.
I'm not just saying that. They know I don't just say things like that. And I love your dress also. You look lovely. You look lovely. I wanted to say this when you came up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you do.
You know, this is very humiliating.
Is it?
Well, of course.
Then I take it back.
Because I was expecting you to say, you said a few things that I never knew before, which is in my dress. I was on television for EWTN and with a bishop. And I thought that it was a fairly good show. And then I get a note from a woman saying, I loved your shoes. This is offensive.
Well, I really had other things to say. I was just warming up. I wanted to ask you, I want to take you back. I never thought, the last thing I thought I would be discussing tonight is the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception. As you know, I'm a very pro-Catholic, non-Catholic, and this has always been a doctrine which has mystified me. And St. Augustine said that original sin is transmitted through the sexual act. I think he was wrong in that, and I'm guessing that you must also think he was wrong in that, since obviously Saint Anne and her husband produced Mary. So how do you reconcile St. Augustine's take on original sin with the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception?
Because all things are possible with God, and if God decides that this one creature is going to be all pure from the moment of a conception, this is something that I not only believe, but which illumines for me, is so crucial in my faith that I can only say, you understand that if little girls were taught from the moment that they're very small, that they have a body which is exactly, biologically speaking, like the body of the Holy Virgin, they will have such an awe and respect for their body that they'll be a model of chastity. And believe me, when women are chaste, you know what happens?
When women are chaste.
Chaste.
Yeah.
Men follow suit because they have an unbelievable sensitivity for the beauty of chastity. But obviously, if a woman lives, the way that women do today, well, you should not be very surprised that they don't respect them. Believe me, this is something that I've seen. I'm so old that I've made quite a few experiences. A man has a feeling of awe for a woman who is conscious of the incredible beauty of her body. It's a mystery. And this you can tell the way that a woman is by the way that she dresses. And today you can only say, I don't know what you can say that they dress. Today they undress with no respect whatever for their body. So the question, you see, when it comes to, of course, it's a mystery of faith. Look, I'm going to tell you something. The Bible is probably one of the most misunderstood books in the history of the world, because you have thousands and thousands and thousands of interpretations. I have a great love for Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard, who declared himself to be the greatest Danish philosopher. And then he adds in parentheses, but there is only one, which is absolutely true. he said a few things which are so beautiful and so profound I'd like to share with you. How should we read the Bible? And he answers, on our knees. If you're a biblical scholar and you approach the Bible and sort of say, no, you have to justify this and that and that and that and that, your pride is going to prevent you from understanding God's message. No, I'm so old once again, but it's amazing things that I really, when I was a little child, and I recall that someone said, there is a man called, I believe, Lichtenberger, and he said, when a gorilla looks into a mirror, what does it see? A gorilla. No, and I say, when a proud scholar who knows everything best and is going to put the Bible, in the sin, justify this and justify that, and why did you do that? In this very moment, you know what's going to happen? When you read the Bible, he's going to see a gorilla, because this is what he has brought into it. So when I hear that great geniuses, atheists, well, that's exactly what happens. I mean, you take Bertrand Russell, who declares himself to be an atheist. Well, obviously, he approached the Bible with the pride of a genius. Beware of geniuses. I tell you, at the end of my life, I'm more and more tempted to beware of geniuses, because nobody makes worse mistakes than people who are geniuses and declare themselves to be geniuses. I recall years ago, I had a little black woman as my cleaning woman, a little black woman, and I loved her. Sorry to say she was not the best cleaner in the world, but I didn't care, because it's a joy to talk to her. As a matter of fact, I used even to take my talks and share them with her. And one day I said to her, Alberta, I'd love to talk to you. You're so sound, and it's such a pleasure to discuss it. And she said, you see, Mrs. von Hildebrand, I tell you, I wasn't ruined by education. I left school in the 3rd grade. Believe me, you enter Hunter, and 2 + 2 makes 4. You leave Hunter, and all of a sudden you discover that there are geniuses who say, well, 2 + 2 is 4, is one possibility. But don't be narrow-minded. It could, well, you laugh. This is something that was declared by the famous yoga teacher, Suzuki. A friend of mine who was a missionary in the Far East for 40 years. And he met Suzuki, who was a great, thousands of young people flocked to learn yoga. And he had a conversation with Suzuki, and Suzuki said, look, 2 + 2 + 4 is one possibility. Don't exclude other possibilities. It's in quote and it's printed. It could also be 2 and 2 is 5, or 2 and 2 is 3. I mean, why limit yourself to such a narrow horizon? This is what is happening today with our famous scholars. Beware of scholars.
Why do you think...
Unless they have humility.
Why do you think self-proclaimed geniuses and brilliant people of this ilk typically have such difficulty with accepting the idea of objective truth?
Because you have to obey. Because, look, the whole question is, I wrote an article about that recently called The Burden of Being a Creature. No, I'm a creature. What does it mean? 2 things. Number one, that I was given existence. In other words, when you're given existence, you have to say thank you. And have you realized the world in which we live is a world in which the word thank you is more and more eliminated, because everything is your right. You don't need to say thank you. I mean, suppose that we fall into the clutches of a totally socialist state.
What do you mean?
A socialist state, when the state did. Well, I mean, look, Do you think that I'm ever going to say thank you when I get my check? What do you mean? It's my right. Number one, I simply say, we say thank you. Number two, you have to obey. No, of course, if you're a child or someone, but once you're grown up and you're, don't forget we are modern people now. We are out of the dark ages. And to obey, for goodness sake, I'm the one going to make my own free choice and free decisions. I have to decide whether I want a child or not. Now, suppose, for example, that I discover myself to be pregnant and I didn't want to. Well, I have a perfect right to say I'm going to eliminate it. Now, recall in Hunter, that was a problem that I faced again and again. And I had a student who was fighting, defending abortion, the right to have an abortion. And she was very eloquent. And so I let her talk, and then I said to her, no, look, according to you, whatever is produced is simply a blurb of tissue or God knows what. If you can convince me scientifically that you have conceived a rat, I'll be the first one to take you to an abortion clinic. But I know that if I have the blessing of conceiving a child, because I'm a human being, I'm going to have a child who is a human being, and therefore I oppose. Well, I said to her, you conceive a rat, all right, fine. And that is the thing that you learn when you teach a great deal, and you make plenty of blunders, and then finally you know the tricks, or to put them in a corner and keep them quiet. I recall I had a student.
You're succeeding.
What? What did you say?
I said you're succeeding, but I know it's not intentional. No, it's just so wonderful to listen to you. That's the problem, you see. We don't have, how much time do we have? We want to get to some questions.
Questions? No.
Soon. No questions?
Well, no, because I'm deaf.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Well, look, they can question you, and I can relax, all right?
Okay. Well, I had some questions for you, but I think you've answered them, and I'm not kidding.
Well, that's right.
I was going to... I've been reading your husband's book, Man and Woman, very similar title to your book.
Well,
the one that was published in 66, I think, right?
I'm going to tell you a secret. Whatever I wrote has been inspired by him.
Oh, I'm very aware of that, and I think
because, after all, I think very highly of the male sex. And I can only tell you whatever I've accomplished in my teaching, it is something that I owe to him, except that I present it with a French sauce, because it was very German, and I'm Latin. Yeah. And so obviously the presentation might have been slightly different, but the substance is something that I received.
Well, in this book, the reason I was reading it is because I realized that your work and his work are so connected. But he makes a statement in his book, which I wanted to ask you about. He says, and this is a little bit off topic, but he says, happiness is love's outcome, never its motive. Obviously, he's talking about marriage, and I thought this is an extraordinary thing. It's very deep. And all of his book, the difficulty, of course, is his writing is very deep. But it's extraordinary because he talks about...
But he's German.
He's German. Yeah.
He's German, but he was born and raised in Italy, so his personality was very Italian, but his mind was German.
Well, I'm half Greek and half German, so I can relate to this.
It's
not a good thing.
You can say what you please, but German force you to think.
Yeah, that's okay. But this idea, happiness is the outcome of love, never its motive. And this is related to what you were talking about earlier, this idea that if we're living for ourselves and if we're looking for happiness in a relationship, it's a completely different idea of the relationship. I'm looking to get something from someone in a relationship or in marriage in the same way that maybe I'm looking to get something from God rather than having a posture of gratitude toward God, a posture of reverence toward God.
Adoration. The first response of the creature towards God is adoration. And this is what we forget today. It is much more, what am I going to get out of it? instead of to adore him. This is what the angels do. It's so beautiful in the Old Testament. We see the angels covering themselves and saying, Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. One of the things that my husband has brought up, and which have been developed further by Edith Stein, is the superb complementarity between man and woman. Each one possesses certain characteristics which are so beautiful and complement the other one. Take Edith Stein, who's giving a talk in Salzburg in 1930. And let me share some of her insights because I think they're superb. Why are men and women so complementary? Because a woman, and this is to her glory, has a very, very keen sense for persons.
For what?
Persons.
Persons.
The person. Someone who is alive and someone who has a soul. Men, I'm sorry to say, love objects.
Love objects.
The fascination of men with tools. This is something which is totally incomprehensible to me. They
Of course,
have
you're a woman.
computers and machines, and to me it's madness. But I'm very glad when they take care of it. But now, take for example something which I imagine, my own imagination, that suppose you have a group of men and women in front of a closed door, and they don't know what is inside. And all of a sudden the door is open, and there are only two things in this room: a newborn baby and a brand new computer. What is going to happen?
We can guess.
Well, tell me, confess.
Confess. The men will head for the computer, and the women will head for the baby.
It's a baby, and then rush to the computer and then play with the computer. Well, the woman will turn to the baby. Who is right? A baby, I tell you something else. Simone de Beauvoir, I'm quoting her, my enemy. Women produce nothing. I'm quoting. Women produce nothing because we give birth. This is something that also chicken and pigs and dogs do. They produce something. Well, men produce machines. And now imagine that we are so clever that we've invented a bomb that can destroy New York City. You press on a button, the whole of New York is gone. Isn't that magnificent? I find it grandiose. At any rate, St. Peter writes in his second epistle something which is not very cheerful, because we're heading towards it. The world will be destroyed by fire. Nothing will be left, except every child to whom a woman have given existence.
Except what?
Every child to whom a woman has given birth, because he has an immortal soul. But all the machines and all the computers and all the invention that men have gone. Dust and ashes, that's all this left. Now, therefore, once again, you understand the bond between woman and life. And this collapses in our society, and this is why I say we are on the brink of an abyss. And if we don't turn back, the future is not bright. I'm going to be called a Cassandra. You're going to see awful speech, very depressing. Yeah. She says all terrible things that can happen. But you've got to be a Cassandra from time to time.
How many people get the Cassandra reference? Watch. See? These are all your fans, that's why. I don't remember which Greek tragedy that's from, but I'm happy to say that I catch your meaning.
Well, you're German, no?
Yeah, and I'm German also. And we have a great head for dates also. And this is, I don't want to forget to ask you this. When I first met you, I could not get over the idea that your husband was born in 1889. But then you said to me, when your father-in-law was born, this is completely off topic, but will you tell us when was your father-in-law born?
1847. 1847.
Yeah.
All right. And you want the date of his birth?
No.
Oh, it's too bad because I know it.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah?
October 6th.
October 6th.
And he was a famous, he was a very remarkable man from many points of view, but he had his weaknesses. But the amazing thing is that even though he was a noble pagan.
A noble pagan.
A noble pagan.
Yes, I remember reading in The Soul of a Lion, which I recommend. I don't know if we have it here, but it's the first.
Well, that's too bad because it's my best book.
Yes, well, I think Ignatius has it or somebody has it.
Maybe it's the only one worth reading.
It's, The Soul of, we can have you back to talk about that one, but it's really the biography of your husband.
Yes.
And I have to say, I truly couldn't put it down. It is just extraordinary. And one of the reasons it's extraordinary is because his voice, of course, is strong in the book. In other words, I'm trying to remember now, is much of it quoted directly from him, or did you rewrite is it in your voice or in his voice? I remember his voice.
Well, I tell you something. I'm coming to the end of my life. And the amazing thing is that you relive your life in such a way that I've done the things that I remember which happened when I was 3 or 4 or 5. Many things that I regret that I've done and should not have done, or things that I should have done, have not done. Lots of things come back to me. And, but there's something that I'm very proud of. That one very fine day, I said to my husband, because of the difference in age between us, it is a source of grief that there's a whole chunk of your life that I have not shared with you. Please write it. The next day he started to write it. Believe it or not, he wrote 5,000 pages.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he stopped in 37 because...
This only took him up to 1937.
He stopped in 1930 because it was Vatican II, and then he was so upset about what was taking place in the church that I stopped it. And, and unfortunately I did, but I mean, nevertheless, I met him 5 years later, so there's only a small gap. But, I mean, this book is something, most of it is not even typed. It's still handwritten. And I mean, John Henry is working desperately now to do it.
We should explain a little bit of this. But let me first of all say that The Soul of a Lion, which I read, it must be 5 years ago now, just before you spoke at Socrates in the City, it's captivating for a number of reasons. But the number one reason I would say is that his voice, which is very much like yours in this sense that it's sometimes unintentionally very funny. In other words, it has such passion that on some level, my response to it is such delight that I find it funny. And I understand that, so that book, I remember it's about 250 pages or something like that, but his memoirs are going to be published soon. Am I mistaken in this?
Yes, as I said, it's coming in. I mean, John has given the finishing touch. He's working desperately. This is
but it still won't be 5,000 pages. How long will this one be?
Well, no, I do believe, unfortunately, Random House is cutting it quite a bit. But I think it's going to be about 250 pages or something like that, but long pages. I mean, it was published in German.
Yeah.
But, one of the things which is, nobody is a prophet in his own country. There's one country in Europe which doesn't do this even when it is Germany.
Which doesn't what?
Germany.
No, but I didn't hear the part.
Well, I mean, for the very plain reason that when he was a young man, he was very successful, and Hitler came to power. Yeah. And then afterwards, I mean, he could not sell his book in Germany. When he wrote Transformation in Christ, he had to take a note plume, because he said, if you use your own word, we cannot send the book in Germany. So it was only after the war, yes. I mean, he was, don't forget, he was enemy number one, and he lost his German citizenship, and he was delighted. He said, because I don't want to be a Nazi, and therefore, he lost it. But I mean, at any rate, all this is still to be done, and John Henry is working on it, and I'm infinitely grateful to this young man who started the work about 10 years ago, not knowing what he was going into. Thank God he had no idea how difficult it was going to see, because otherwise he wouldn't have started.
Well, we have to explain this also for those who aren't aware of the Dietrich von Hildebrand Legacy Project. This is the title.
And he was 24, and the only thing, that conquered him was my husband's love for music. And he's a very talented musician himself, and this is what conquered him, and now he's discovering it. And I'm teaching a great deal. I simply say, no look, I'm old. I know certain things, I don't know them. And so I invite him to question in, so lots of things that, I know. very personal, which I've communicated and shared with him.
Well, my main goal for the evening, and usually it's the case with Socrates in the City, is to just whet people's appetites, because there's only so much we can do in the few minutes we have here. But your husband's books and your books are so extraordinary, and I think you realize that Protestants are utterly unaware of your work and your husband's work. And so it's my joy to try to get my friends who are not Catholics aware of your books and his books. And I guess my question is, how well known, or how much is his work taught in Catholic universities today?
Look, his greatest book, or what I consider to be his greatest book, is The Nature of Love, that was translated in English and was published last year, I believe.
Last year?
Yes.
Wow.
By, what was the publisher? I've forgotten. At any rate, in Germany...
I think you've covered up your microphone. Better? Okay.
I apologize.
No, I apologize.
You know, at any rate, the book sold miserably in Germany, but miserably. I believe we got 100 mark. And I recall one of the reviewers said, the book isn't worth reading. He quotes Freud only twice. That was in Germany. You know,
We've got to get that book.
Well, at any rate. I recall saying to him, I think it's a great book. And I'm convinced that and I tell you something, your work is not appreciated. But I'm going to tell you something. It will be appreciated one day, because sooner or later, truth is discovered. And I cannot help but rejoice that it's not appreciated in your lifetime, because when you're up there, vanity can no longer affect you. It's not good to be praised. Look, you keep looking at your watch.
I want to make sure that
Well, I know very well what you mean to say. You've spoken enough. Please stop. That's what you're telling me.
That's absolutely untrue. That's your first mistake of the evening. No, not at all. Not at all.
Only one mistake, but that's
the only one.
Well, that's extraordinary.
And rebuking me for liking your dress publicly. So that's two. But no, I just want to make sure we have enough time. I do want to say that The Soul of a Lion, do we have that tonight? I should ask Harris. We don't have that tonight, right? What's that? Oh, we sold out. Wow, okay. But that book is just so extraordinary. But for me, it opened up a world. This is the thing. And I don't think it's only because I'm interested in Germany and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, but it just opened up a whole world to me. So as I say, my goal for the evening is to get people to read your books and his books. Now, the book that we were ostensibly talking about this evening, Man and Woman, A Divine Invention, I think you were talking about the privilege of being a woman, which is another book.
That preceded it.
It preceded it.
Well, that was my attack on Simone de Beauvoir. To say, she said that to be a woman is inferior and you'll be ashamed of it and the rest of it. All this nonsense. And then, I was so enraged that I wrote the book in something like 3 weeks, because it was all in me. And then it was well received, and then I decided to complement it and try to show that according to God's plan, the complementarity of men and women is so admirable, and you find it in the lives of saints. Let me end, because you're going to get nervous.
No, I'm looking at my watch just to make sure that we have time, and we have time. And
the greatest...
What are you going to do? Okay, go ahead.
The most beautiful love between man and woman is St. Joseph and Mary. And I claim that it's so sublime that it's kept in total mystery. Not a word is said about it, but I can imagine we are not yet capable to appreciate it. But then what I try to show in Man and Woman, A Divine Invention. You take the lives of saints. What is amazing when you read the foundation of Catholic orders? St. Francis of Sales, St. Jean-François de Chantal, St. Francis of Assisi, St. Clare, St. Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross. You know, in other words, that there is such a magnificent complementarity, enrichment, and I come to my conclusion, and I promise that is the last word I'll say tonight.
I don't know.
Sorry to say that is going to be the end. Well, you know, I'm going to say that finally. You know,
I have two more questions for you.
What is so admirable is that once you have truly understood the beauty of your own sex, because God made me a woman, and it is my duty to understand what did He tell me by making me a woman. You know what happens? He gives you a key to the other sex. And I claim that there's such dissensions between men and women because men no longer understand the beauty of being a man, and women no longer understand the beauty of being a woman. I repeat, if you truly understand what God, the message that He's giving you, He made you a man, and truly understand what it means, you have a key to the other sex. And this is why the happiest marriage, the man is truly a man and a woman is truly a woman. And then comes a union of love which results to eternity. Because obviously it is said that in heaven, neque nubentur, neither you're going to get married, no. But what is going to flourish is love.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What was that? I have two questions for you. The first is, well, let me ask you. You've said so much about women, which I think, I'm so sorry to say, is unknown to most of us. In other words, if you went around the room, I doubt that most of us in the room would come up with much of what you've said. So I want to thank you for that, first of all. But what would you say, obviously, God created men and women. You've told us a little bit about what makes women so extraordinary and wonderful. What is it about men? You've touched on it a little bit, but what is it about men that is wonderful?
Well, I mean, you know, we made a deal. And I told you that tonight I was going to speak about the beauty and mission of women. And I
didn't make any deal.
No.
Your microphone is covered up again.
Maybe you are deaf.
Oh, Lily, hold on. You said, did you hear what she just said? She said that maybe you were deaf. You didn't really say that.
I tell you that if I succeed in showing the beauty of women,
yes,
many men are going to leave the room crestfallen and say, I'm only a man. All right. I don't want this to happen, because I happen to think very highly of the male sex. And so I say, you've got to promise solemnly that you're going to get a male speaker showing to men the beauty and the greatness of masculinity.
Can you recommend anyone?
Well, I mean, I can, of course, I know some of them. I'll tell you.
You'll tell me privately?
Privately.
Privately, okay. I can't be the speaker at Socrates in the city. I just wrote a book called 7 Men. I don't know if you know this. My most recent book is called 7 Men.
I heard it.
And it's you heard about it. And I talk about this issue in that book. So I'm aware of some of the things that might be said in favor of men.
You know, I tell you something. When my husband's memoirs come out, it's going to have a very particular interest for you because of your beautiful book on Bonhoeffer. You know, because Bonhoeffer fought Nazism from the inside, and my husband fought him from the outside. But I mean, somehow there's such a connection between them. They understand that it was an evil, evil philosophy. And don't you believe that it's dead? You know, it continues because, I mean, the sort of revolt of man against God. This is the essence of Nazism. It is the essence of communism. It's the essence of atheism. And so you're going to see there's a communion of souls there that is going to give you great joy. Because, I mean, your book was a magnificent book.
Thank you. I can't tell you how I'm looking forward to the publication of this book. And I know John Henry will be the editor. Is this supposed to come out next year? It's coming out next year?
Well, John Henry is giving the finishing touches. It must be delivered at random on the 31st of December. And he's working feverishly to finish it. Because, I mean, he's rechecking on the, number one, the translation, number two, all the footnotes. You know, Germans said footnotes. And That's what the thing is.
All right, my final question, just for a brief answer. You clearly are saying that Simone de Beauvoir has a very negative view of women.
What do you mean? That's an abominable understatement.
Yeah. That's exactly what I meant. But it's interesting to me because it seems that if this is true, it explains that, without saying so, much of feminism is a project to turn women into men rather than to appreciate femininity as it is.
Well, I mean, if they try to become like men, the most abominable caricature. I mean, they can't do it. It's perfectly ridiculous.
It's not easy, believe me.
No.
It's even tough for me, I have to say. But this is, it seems to me this is the essence, because I've never heard anyone...
But you're young.
I've just never heard anyone talk about feminism quite in that way before. That, in other words, that she had written these things that are so negative about women. It's very interesting and telling.
When a woman tells us that she hates her own body and tells us that she hates babies, I'm quoting, I hate babies, and I simply say that is the end. The sun says that it's over. And nevertheless, she's famous, and she will, don't forget, to be famous often means to be infamous. And the New York Times calls you famous, and then afterwards you discover that basically she was infamous. She was a bestseller, unbelievable success. It's so easy to have success. Invent a stupidity that has never been said before. Truth is one, and errors are millions. So it's extremely easy to become famous when you turn to an error, because all of a sudden you discover one that hasn't been said as yet. But truth is only one. And you see, that is the sad thing about truth. You say something true, by definition, it's not yours. This is why truth is Catholic. Means to say universal. It's open to all people.
Small c, yep. And this is, I guess, this is why truth is threatening to some people, because, as you said, it implies gratitude and admiration.
And humility.
Yeah. Well, I think...
and humility is something that many people are allergic to.
But not us.
D1, don't you think that I've spoken enough?
All right, I'll accept that. You haven't spoken enough. We're actually out of time. I promised everyone that we would end right about now. So let me say, on behalf of this wonderful room of friends, how much we appreciate your coming here from Scarsdale in a car, to be clear on that.
Well, I'll tell you something. It's awful because you tempted me. You had sworn that I'll never give another talk, and then came your invitation, and being a woman, I was weak. But
Yes.
I tell you, very frankly, this is my swan song. And
this is it?
Yes, I just feel that enough is enough.
Enough is enough? Really?
Yes.
Well, okay.
Isn't it wise for a woman of my age to get ready to face God instead of talking and chatting?
I think pretending that you know whether your time is near is a kind of arrogance.
When you give a talk and people keep laughing, I'm not certain it's a good sign.
No, I'm sure it's not. Well, we're out of time, and I don't mind cutting you off because I'm sure this is not your swan song. As a good evangelical, I rebuke this idea as a negative confession, and we will be delighted to hear more from you, whether it's on EWTN or here. It doesn't matter. But it's just a joy, Lily, to have you with us. Thank you for consenting to be with us. And as I say to everybody, I hope that you will pick up her books and her husband's books and really acquaint yourself with some deep, great thinking. You understand we're just scratching the surface here. That's what's so troubling about it. You realize that we're so far from this kind of thinking that it's going to take some time. So let's begin as soon as possible. But until then, God bless you, and thank you for coming to Socrates in the City.